It's my real pleasure to have my colleague Tom Tomasovic present this webinar. Tom has been teaching the subject on data analytics for a very long time. He's also a passionate data analyst himself. So I will hand over the presentation to Tom. Over to you, Tom. So please take care of from here.
Yep, I'm happy to take care of things here. Welcome to everybody who is on the stream. This is a training or a webinar that is being presented by Adaptive US on essential tools for data analysis. A little bit about Adaptive. Adaptive is one of the world's leading IIBA certification trainers. We have over 1,450 certified professionals that have gone through various training programs with Adaptive, and that actually represents about 5% of the overall BAs that are certified through the IIBA. We're also pretty well respected and liked by our clients with a 4.9 out of 5 customer satisfaction rating. When you get training from Adaptive, it's a full purpose program. We have a series of, or actually a group of very experienced trainers. As I said, we have over 1,450 certified individuals that have gone through our training, and we offer guarantees on the success, your success, having been a participant in our training. So who am I? Well, I'm Tom Tomasovic. I'm a senior consultant. I've been training with Adaptive US for several years now. I've got a whole list of different letters and designations that follow my name. Probably the most interesting thing is that I hold 5 out of the 7 available certifications from the IIBA. All of the specialty certifications and the ECBA. I also have some other certifications in data visualization and certainly agile software development. I'm currently in Delaware, Ohio. I was in New York for 30 plus years, and we moved out here to the suburbs about a year and a half ago. As a professional, I've been in the software development industry for, actually it says 20 plus years on the slide, it's probably 25 plus years. I started my career as a developer, and over the course of those 25 years, did software development, management of software development, business analysis, and management of business analysis. An interesting sidebar is that before I got into the software development world, I spent about 20 years on stage as a professional singer, doing opera, oratorio, and musical theater. In addition to Adaptive, I also teach for IAG Consulting, for the Freeman Group, for the International Institute of Learning, and the New School. And in general, I focus on BA fundamentals kinds of things, eliciting, writing, managing, and communicating requirements, agile development, and on the IIBA certification side, I've taught AAC, CBDA, CPOA, and ECBA. When I'm not busy training people how to be good BAs, I like to play pool a lot. Used to play a lot more straight pool than I do right now. Straight pool's not as big in the Ohio area as 8-ball and 9-ball. Also like to travel, which is really great now that the pandemic is starting to wane a little bit, and people are a little bit more comfortable getting on planes and going places. So we're back to our travel. And I also like wine. I have a relatively extensive wine cellar. I like to cook. And I also, being in the suburbs now, can look at growing some things. So what's on the agenda for today? Well, we're going to start with a bit of an introduction, which is going to cover not only data analysis, but also just tying it into business analysis. And then we're going to talk about 2 specific aspects of the data analytics world, which is data preparation and exploratory data analysis, focusing on using Excel. And then we'll talk some about data visualization, which will mention both Excel and Tableau. And then hopefully we'll have some time for some questions and a wrap up. So, okay, business analysis is all about change. If you're familiar with the BABOK, this statement from the BABOK about the definition of business analysis is that it's all about enabling change in our enterprises. Organizations need change. Businesses provide services and products to people. In some cases, we're trying to generate profit, but in any case, in order to be a successful business, we need to operate efficiently and effectively. In order to continue to operate efficiently and effectively, businesses need to be able to respond to changes in the market conditions, changes in technology. And business analysts are really a key resource in this change process. When I teach my business analysis courses, I frequently tell my students that your job as a business analyst is to help people do their jobs better. As BAs, we don't get paid for producing artifacts and producing solutions. We get paid for improving business outcomes. On an almost a daily basis, I'm sure all of us are hearing about data. Data is everywhere. Data is being produced everywhere. Data is being produced in massive amounts, continuously and continually. And organizations are understanding now more and more that they can use this data in order to help them make their business decisions. So this is a focus of the IIBA and the business world. How do we help people make better decisions with their data? This quote that you see on screen comes from the Guide to Business Data Analytics, which is the reference guide for the CBDA certification. The goal of business data analytics is really to allow organizations to use the data that they have, the data they generate, and data that they can obtain from other sources to make informed decisions to support their business initiatives. Data analytics is really about making good decisions. As BAs, we are a part of the data analytics process, and we will work with various other technical resources, data engineers, data analysts, data scientists, to leverage their expertise to help our businesses to make better business decisions and hence to improve their business outcomes. There are a lot of people who talk about the idea of achieving a certification in business data analytics like CBDA, and stress the idea that this will prepare you to be a data analyst. That's probably because data analysis and being a data analyst is a very popular job classification these days. And so people are looking at it from the perspective of, oh, well, how do we help people into this field? I'm not quite a proponent of that, honestly. I believe that data analytics is much more than simply data analysis. A business analyst is more than a data analyst. Okay, as a BA, you're expected to use your business knowledge, your domain knowledge, your overall business acumen, and all of the soft skills that you've generated or developed as a part of your BA career to help data analysis to become data analytics. You certainly should learn about data analysis, including how to do data analysis and data science even. But you don't need to be a great data analyst to be a good data analytics professional. There are lots of ways to look at the process of data analytics. The one that you see on screen actually is one of my favorites. It comes from my friends at Maven Analytics. They emphasize that business value comes from analytics, not analysis. And they talked about these 7 steps. Our focus today is really going to be on the middle section of this, these 3 steps: collecting and preparing data, understanding data, analyzing and visualizing the data. We're going to take a look, just a brief look, at 2 of the tools that can help you as a business analyst to be a part of this process. Understanding the kinds of things that you can do with these 2 tools will give you a leg up in data analytics space, but they're also tools that can be used by any business analyst in the process of the work that we do. Spreadsheets have been around for a long time. The first spreadsheet application was actually VisiCalc, which was introduced in 1979. In 1983, Lotus 1-2-3 came out, and Excel itself was introduced in the period between 1985 and 1987. More recently, Google Sheets was introduced in 2012, over 10 years ago. Current estimates say there are probably more than 750 million Excel users. That's a lot of people using the tool. Given the fact that spreadsheets have been around longer than a lot of us have been around, it's probably not unreasonable to assume that as a BA, you've probably had some experience either with Excel or some other spreadsheet. A tool like Excel is an important part of your toolkit as a BA. So what kinds of things can we do with Excel? Well, Excel can currently process over 1 million rows of data and over 1,600 columns. When we talk about big data these days and talk about data sets, that's not really a lot. People talk about millions and even billions of transactions, but the capability to process smaller data sets is critical to being able to do good business analytics. In the world of statistics, even a sample size as small as 30 can yield reliable and meaningful results. That means we don't need to analyze millions of records to impact the business. And given that we don't have to analyze millions of records, a tool like Excel can certainly help us get a lot of information and knowledge from the data that we have. So what kinds of things can we do with Excel? Well, certainly we don't have to type data into a spreadsheet. Excel has the capability to bring data in from text files, from other sources like databases and files, and it also has a tool that we're going to talk about more, something called Power Query, that helps us to get data into the Excel environment in order to be used by the tool. Once we have the data in Excel, we can summarize and explore it. Excel has a library of over 400 native functions. They include a lot of the standard statistical functions, and there are also a set of data analytics tools included in the Data Analysis Tool Pack, and there are even extensions such as Frontline Solver that can extend the capabilities of Excel to do analysis very greatly. They can extend Excel's capabilities in many different directions. Lastly, we can visualize data with Excel. Excel can produce charts and graphs, and those charts and graphs can actually be combined to produce interactive dashboards. And we'll take a look at those a little bit later. So what about data? I always giggle when I look at this slide, because I think, this is data. What you see up on screen is a CSV file. It's a text file of data that you might get from any of a variety of sources. And it wouldn't surprise me if many of you had seen data files like this. It would astonish me if any of you thought that this file in its native format would be useful for deriving information or knowledge. And I would argue that most business users would look at a file like this and say, I don't need this data stuff. I know what the business is about. I'm going to go with my gut. I probably would do the same thing if somebody were asking me to derive information from that presentation on screen. Well, Excel allows us to take this and move it into a format, move it into something that we can actually derive some data from. And it's not a very complicated process. Out of the box, Excel would allow us to open that file and present it the way you see it up on screen. You can see that it's broken into a certain number of columns. It's organized. It's a little bit better. That certainly is a start, but there's a lot more that we would really have to do with this file in order for it to be able to provide useful business insights. Oh, sorry, my mouse is doing funny things. My mouse did funny things. Okay, so what kinds of things can we do directly out of the box with Excel? Well, we certainly can break columns up. If you've done any work with Excel, you probably have been exposed to its capability to split columns, to do some calculations on columns, that sort of things. One of the things that you'll notice on this screen, which is one of the things that is a real problem for Excel directly, or at least in my experience with Excel directly, is that you can see that each one of these rows of data is actually two rows of data. There's a blank row that is between every row of data. That is one of the areas where I personally would find Excel very difficult to deal with. A lot of the other things you can do. So what do we do about this? Well, our good friends at Microsoft have provided a tool that will help us do this. And this is the tool that I mentioned earlier, something called Power Query. Power Query allows us to take this data, and before we put it into the actual Excel spreadsheet, we can do a lot of manipulation with it. It's not easy, or it's not difficult to access Power Query. Actually, if you, instead of opening that CSV file directly in Excel, if you look on the data menu in Excel, there is a capability called Get Data. Get Data allows you to bring data in from a variety of different data sources, including text files. And if you point yourself to that CSV file using the Get Data functionality, it opens up into Power Query. In Power Query, the presentation looks a lot like an Excel spreadsheet, but you can also see down at the bottom here, you'll see something that says Transform Data. And if you select to transform data, Power Query will then allow you to do a tremendous amount of manipulation of the data. It will certainly eliminate all these null rows that you can see up here. These nulls, those blank rows that I mentioned. And it will allow you to do things like split this salary column into the 100,000 versus the $120,000, and also to replace all of these not a number NaN designations that were in the file, which would make that data very difficult to manipulate and deal with in the Excel environment. We can split down our states, our cities and states, and over here you can see a number of different pieces of information, different criteria that were generated by the CSV file that need to be split apart into different categories to deal with. All of this are things that you can do using Power Query. The nice thing about Power Query is that it is based on a programming language, but you don't need to know the programming language. The program will do it using menus and icon, or not icons, but clicking on different aspects in the Power Query interface, which unfortunately lives above here. I don't have it, but it looks very much like the ribbon that is in Excel. It has a lot of these things that you can do, and as you click through them and do them, Power Query identifies what the actual code is to do those, to take those steps, and it also records those steps into a sort of a script file that you can then use if you want to rework it. You can also go back and eliminate steps and add steps, and all of this is done in a really nice, easy to deal with interface. So once you've got all of that done and you click the load button, this is what you see in the Excel spreadsheet. This is that same file transformed using Power Query. You can see here that I've split out the data titles so that we have Data Analyst. I've split out the salary minimum and maximum here so that where we do have a salary, you can see it. Things like city and state are split out. And if we scrolled through all of this, you would see that a lot of the other, that whole set of criteria that I had is all split out. Now, this may not be the be all and end all. If you look really closely at this file, there's still a little bit of other information or other kinds of transformations that you might have to make before it was completely usable. But certainly this is a lot more usable than either the Excel file or the original Excel file, or certainly the CSV file. So once we have the data in here in its kind of transformed and quote clean state, our next task is going to be able to try to understand what the data is in this file. Now, what do I say, or what do I mean when I say understanding the data? Well, as you can see up on screen, this is another file. This is another data file. This was a cleaned up file, but you can see that it has columns that have text values in it, has columns that have number values in it. When we're trying to analyze this data, before we do any really in-depth analysis, we want to have a general idea of what the data is all about. So here we would look at it and say, okay, what are the potential values that we have in these various text columns? Are they categorical values so that there are a limited number of them and we can say we can categorize our data based on them? We have a couple of those here. We can see the home ownership and also the income verification. This happens to be a file on loans for payment of credit cards. And then we have a whole bunch of numbers. This particular data file happens to have several thousand records in it. To try and understand what those records are all about with the data in this form, I would argue would still be a cumbersome process. But I mentioned that Excel has several hundred different functions that we can use to help us with this process. And we can see things like this. This is all based on that, that data file that you just saw. So I've taken here all of the numerical columns, and I've said we can find the minimum value and the maximum, giving us the range. We can find the average. We can find the median. We can find the standard deviation. And I've defined something called the upper limit and the lower limit, which is simply, in this particular case, 3 times the standard deviation. The count of items that exceed the my upper limit or my lower limit. My lower limits in this particular case are all 0 because we're basically talking about dollars and cents. But here you can see that I have an upper limit value of $1,240.95 for our installment, and my maximum value in my data set is $1,309.49. So I do have some outliers. Excel has allowed me to calculate how many outliers I have, and I see that I have 30 outliers in that column. Similarly, I've done these calculations and come up with a range, an estimate of the number of records in my database that exceed what I think is an acceptable maximum, and I would consider an outlier. There are a couple of other different ways that we can calculate outliers. I can calculate where each of the instances in my database fits in terms of its percentage of maximum. So anything above $1,184.86 is above 99% of the average installment for these loans. Just another way of calculating what are potentially outliers. And then lastly, there's something called 1.5 times the IQR, and that's a little bit more statistically it's a statistical process that people use for identifying outliers. I'm not going to go into that one. But in addition, out of the box, I can also do histograms. A histogram is a frequency distribution. So looking at the income, my income column, I can say that for income values between $25,000 and $50,000 a year, I have 338 instances in my database. And I can visualize this so that I can see immediately that most of my income in this file of over 7,000 records is under $125,000 a year. Really, most of it, the vast majority of it, is between $50,000 and $125,000 per year. We also have out of the box in Excel something called box and whisker plots, which really calculate the quartiles, so that we start here from the lower limit, and then we get up to here, which is the first 25% of the data, so that 25% of my data in income is sort of below $48,000 a year, $48,000 to $50,000. A little hard to see, but and that over 75% or 75% of my data or more is under $100,000 a year. What you see up on top here is Excel's estimate at what are the outliers based on the data that we have. And this is all really Excel out of the box. There's nothing sophisticated about this. It's straight formulas. There are formulas, as I said, for the minimum, maximum, average, median, and standard deviation. It's about just using Excel's native functionality. There's no programming that's involved in it. This is something that as a BA, you really should be familiar with. But Excel also has another tool, which we're going to take a quick look at, which is called the pivot table. I don't know how many of you are familiar with pivot tables. I can say that in my past experience, when I first was introduced to pivot tables, I thought they were very complex and very cumbersome and very difficult to deal with. And I thought, there are formulas that I can do all of the things that I can do in this tool called a pivot table that I'm already familiar with. Why should I worry about pivot tables? Well, I can tell you that that was probably one of the bigger mistakes I've made in my career. Pivot tables do a lot of the same things that you can do with straight formulas in Excel, but they make life so much easier. To develop a pivot table, we have this pivot table fields, and it shows me a list of all of the fields that I have in my data table. It allows me to do drag and drops so that I can design a table that has column names, row names, and values. So here I can see this particular one. I have my rows are my customer names, and I can see all of my customer names here. I am showing the sum of their sales value. And I can, this Excel does this, puts it all together just by you dragging things into the appropriate areas on this field. Excuse me. So it's a very flexible kind of thing. I will just say to you that if you're not familiar with pivot tables in Excel, make it your mission to learn and understand about pivot tables. Every minute that you spend learning about pivot tables will save you hours in the long run. Trust me on this one. I've got a couple of other pivot tables here that I put together. Just examples of the kinds of things that I could do. And there's a reason why I've got these showing up here. Because the other thing that you can do with pivot tables is that you can use them to create charts. What you see up on screen is an example of actually the charts that were created from some of those pivot tables, actually more than those pivot tables, but from those pivot tables and a couple of other pivot tables that are produced again effectively natively by Excel out of the box. But the nice thing about these is that all of these charts are tied to their underlying pivot tables. So that if you were to change something in the pivot table, the chart would automatically change, making the charts very dynamic. What you see over here on the side is something that Excel calls slicers, which are effectively filters that can apply to pivot tables. So in this particular presentation, I have what amounts to a dashboard that can be filtered by any of these categories, and each of these charts that is attached to this particular filter will be modified based on the selections in these filters. Overall, it makes it relatively straightforward to create a visualization, create an interactive dashboard in Excel. Speaking of dashboards, we're going to move on to my next tool, or our other tool for the day, which is Tableau. If you can think back to what was on the previous screen, I hope you would realize that the presentation here is substantially the same. There are a couple of minor differences between it, but the information is absolutely completely the same. This is a dashboard that was created in Tableau. Tableau is a data visualization tool. That's where it lives. The whole purpose of Tableau is to be able to help business users and business analysts to visualize data to support data analytics. Tableau is not the only one of these tools. Actually, Microsoft has a tool called Power BI, which is very similar to Tableau, similar in its usage. It's a completely different tool. It has different types of functionality, but it is a data visualization tool. There are others out there. ClickView comes to mind, and I know that there are several other ones. Which one of these tools you use is basically determined by the organizations that you're working for. It's basically determined by your comfort level. There are reasons why I like Tableau. There are reasons why I actually like Power BI, although I'm not much of a Power BI person. But I don't think that there's anybody out there that would argue that these data visualization tools are not useful for business people. Interestingly enough, Tableau also imports data. It can import data from Excel. Tableau can also import data from a variety of different sources. Tableau developers have created more than 50 different direct connectors, which allow you as a Tableau user to basically specify what sort of data source you are working with, and Tableau under the covers will put together all of the connection information that you need in order to extract data from that data source. It covers most of the relational databases, covers big data sources, cloud data sources, web-based data, OLAP cubes, text files, and statistical files. And a lot of what we saw with Power Query is also available in the Tableau interface. You can do things like splitting columns, like creating calculations, changing data types, all of the sorts of things, or a lot of the sorts of things that you could do with Power Query in Excel, you can do in Tableau. Um, there's an interesting little bit of Tableau, which is called the data interpreter, which also does a whole lot of the cleaning, similar to what Power Query did with removing blank rows from the CSV file. A data interpreter in Tableau does that sort of thing too. So you've got a lot of functionality that you can leverage in these tools. The Tableau family also has another interesting tool, which is probably outside the scope of most BAs. It's a tool called Tableau Prep. What Tableau Prep does is it allows you to develop data pipelines so that you could combine various different data sources together and basically build a roadmap for how that data will be aggregated before you even begin to bring it into Tableau to try and visualize it. That's a new tool, relatively new tool. And there are also some other tools out there. Alteryx comes to mind, which are intended to do the same things. They're all intended to bring data together, to aggregate data, to make it easy for business users to use that data to do their data analytics. I include or I talk about things like this in the BA space because I think that BAs in this space are probably a good interface between the business users and the technical users. So as a BA, you can do a lot of these things. You can help to set up these things so that business users can use them as opposed to developing them. The functionality is there for the business users to develop them, but as a BA, you can facilitate that. Once you have your data into Tableau, Tableau gives you what is effectively a canvas to work with, so that you can see here we have a canvas which represents my visualization. This is the visualization that you would see on screen if you were going to present this. And the tools around it allow you to basically do this all by drag and drop. I can see my data source that's here. I can see the fields that I have available in my data source, and I can simply drag one of those field names over to either the rows or the columns. In this particular case, you can see I've got the rows where it says customer name, and you can see my customer names going down the left-hand side of the visualization. And you can see that I have here the sum of sales, and each one of these bars represents the sum of sales in my data set for that particular customer. I can also build filters so that I can say if I want to choose specific customers to work with, if I want to choose customers based on any set of criteria, I can create those filters that will be reflected in this visualization. I also have the ability to do a lot of other things in terms of my visualization, including changing the color, changing the size of the bars, changing the labels that are on the bars. And although you can't see it in this because it's not live, Tableau has a tooltip where if you roll over any of the specific areas on the screen, it will show you some underlying data about that particular bar. Another nice thing that Tableau provides you with is this thing over in the right-hand side, the upper right-hand side, called Show Me. What Show Me does is that it analyzes the data that you have selected, the rows and columns, and it will provide you with recommendations for potential visualizations. So if you don't know exactly what kind of visualization you would like for your data, you can click Show Me, and Show Me will tell you what your choices are. And it will also allow you to basically click and produce different versions of the visualization so that you can basically cycle through different kinds of visualizations, looking for the one that will present your data in its best light. In addition to just producing those visualizations, there's also a good deal of analytics functionality that it comes out of the box, drag and drop with Tableau. So here we can see there's a trend line. And I've dragged a trend line onto my line graph, and you can see that now I have a trend line for this particular data presentation. All done with drag and drop, and all very easy to manipulate. This was actually Tableau was another tool that I was first introduced when I started to do my CBDA certification, which was about three plus years ago. And it was another tool that I was a little bit overwhelmed by, but as I've worked with it more, I've come to appreciate the idea of all of the things that you can do with it. Um, and that with just a little bit of work, there's a lot that you can produce. It's also very extensible. There's a tremendous amount of functionality. You could spend weeks, if not months, learning how to use Tableau to do a lot of sophisticated things. How much you learn, how much you do is really up to you. It's kind of the sky's the limit. So once I have all of my charts put together, I can then combine them into a dashboard. And a dashboard is created very similarly. It has a canvas and it's a drag and drop proposition. There's a lot of functionality for helping you to arrange things on your dashboard to make it to make the presentation as sophisticated as possible, to make the presentation as effective as possible. But it still comes down to combining the charts that you've done in Tableau to make this all work. Now, why do I like Tableau quite as much as I do? Well, two reasons. One of which is that there is an extensive community of Tableau users out there. And they are an extremely welcoming community. You can find people in the Tableau community that will help you do virtually anything that you need to do. In fact, there's Tableau has a community forum where frequently people will post questions about I'm trying to do this visualization, I'm trying to do this calculation, and it's not working. And people in the Tableau community will come back and provide you with examples of how it should work, and potentially even troubleshoot your code in order to help you do your visualizations. It's that kind of community. There are a number of different websites and different basically organizations that do regular Tableau training type webinars and things like that that you can plug into. There are Tableau user groups, a number of Tableau user groups. In fact, you could probably find a Tableau user group meeting that is open and available to you almost any day of any week. There are that many of them out there. Tableau also provides something called Tableau Public. Tableau Public is a really interesting thing in that it is a virtually 100% capability, virtually 100% of the capabilities of the Tableau desktop application, which is not cheap, that is available to the public. The two things that Tableau Public will not allow you to do, well, there are three things really that it won't allow you to do. One of which is that it limits the data sources that you can connect to. It limits your distribution so that you can't really save Tableau Public dashboards and forward them around to your friends or your business colleagues. And anything that's produced in Tableau Public is housed on a Tableau Public server. So that it's not good for business uses because of confidentiality. But if you want to try and do things, all of the things that I've done are done in Tableau Public. Those two capabilities or those few capabilities make it an easy choice for me to say Tableau is a good tool for the BA. So as a BA, what can you do to move into this field? Well, first of all, You want to be able to leverage your skills and competencies. It's not, being in data analytics is not just about learning the tools. It's about that business acumen, that business competence that you need to bring to the data analytics environment. Learn the tools. Yes, learn those tools, become comfortable with Excel, become comfortable with Tableau, but also at the same time, focus on the underlying principles. Doing data analysis and data visualization is largely about statistics. Understanding statistics, getting some statistical background is an important part of being able to do good data analytics. When you move into the visualization area, there are underlying capabilities or underlying things that you need to know. Precognitive attributes and Gestalt principles. Did any of you notice, as a part of this presentation, the fact that on some of the slides there were things that were highlighted, that through most of the slides, pretty much all of the slides, the titles were all in the same color, the same size, the bullets were all the same, the fonts were all the same through that? These are the things that are underlying principles of good data visualization. Understanding how we respond to visual presentations as human beings is an important part of being able to develop good data visualizations. Understand the analytics process. I said that we were talking here today about the three middle bullets in that analytics process. The other bullets are also important. They are similar to what you would do as a BA in the application environment, but understand that it's not just about the tools. And then finally, understand that you're going to need to work with business and technical stakeholders. You don't need to be a data scientist to be a good data analytics professional. You don't even necessarily need to be a good data analyst to be a good data analytics professional. But you do need to be able to work with those people. You do need to be able to work with your technical resources, your database people, your data environment people, in order to move this process forward. And obviously, you need to be able to work with your business people to understand what they need and how to help them get this. As a part of this, you might want to consider the CBDA, the CBDA certification from the IIBA. Adaptive offers a number of different ways of dealing with the CBDA certification, starting with self-study materials, self-study materials, and master classes to prepare you for the CBDA certification. We're also introducing a new product right now, which extends that capability to include practical hands-on training with things like Excel, Tableau, and SQL. That training will include a project that you will have to produce in order to be able to indicate that you've learned what we're doing, give you some examples of different kinds of things that you might do to help you improve your capabilities with these tools. The Data Analysis Bootcamp also includes sessions for resume and interview preparation, tutorials that are open and available to you to tune in on a regular basis to speak with our experts about your problems. And the next or the first version of the boot camp starts on April 8th. And if you're interested in more information about it, there is a link at the bottom, Adaptive US Data Analysis Bootcamp. Adaptive has a lot of capabilities and offers a lot to our people. We give you our courses are certified by the IIBA to meet any sort of requirements for professional development or professional contact. We have instructor-led sessions. We produce study guides. A big one that I'm a big fan of is question banks and exam simulators, so that if you're preparing for the exam, you have some examples. Our people are involved with the IIBA, so we're very familiar with the way questions are put together on the IIBA exams. A lot of other different resources that are available to you as a member of the adaptive family. I said that we have some a good set of instructors that support our courses. What you see on screen probably represents somewhere north of 125 collective years of experience in the BA environment. It's probably closer to 150 or more years of collective experience. People who are very experienced at this and have been involved with it for a long time. Lastly, Adaptive offers a number of different guarantees, including that if you don't pass your exam, we will work with you to pay for your retake or to refund your money. Our courses are guaranteed to run. If you register for a class, it's not going to be canceled. And we also try and do price protection to ensure that you're getting the best possible value. And that brings us, we have about 8 minutes left in the presentation. So at this point, I would like to open up the floor for anyone who has any particular questions that you would like for me to answer. I'm going to ask you if you could to unmute yourself, just because I don't have access to the LinkedIn chat or the LinkedIn stream on this. I don't know if LN is still here on the call.
Hey, Tom, I think it doesn't allow any participant to speak. At best, they can provide a chat. That's how LinkedIn Live works.
Okay. Do you have the stream up, Ellen? Have you seen any questions in the stream?
Of course, there is one which came from Tatiana, indicating whether she would benefit from this course, getting herself CBDA certified, and also kind of getting her skills on the on Excel and Tableau, which is pretty much there. Then Daryl has a question: after completing the training certification for the ECBA, will I be able to take ECBA certification test with IIBA? Of course, but I don't think this program that we're talking of, Data Analysis Bootcamp, is not related to ECBA. It's related to CBDA. So
yeah,
ECBA is a different program that you have to join the ECBA or the BA Bootcamp, the Business Analysis Bootcamp, not the Data Analysis Bootcamp. And is there any other question which is something we could answer? If you folks have any further question, please put it on the chat. We will be happy to answer. I think for me,
I'll go back
it was a great learning session because I never have been exposed to Tableau, although I have used Excel quite a lot, and I also have experimented with ClickView. ClickView also gives very nice graphics. I did play around a little bit with Power BI, but not much. But maybe Power BI is something that we could look at having an access to as a tool, because we are now a Microsoft sponsored startup. So we do have some good access to Microsoft tools.
Yeah. I will go. After I climb off here, I will climb onto I'll try and climb into LinkedIn to look at the chat and see if there's anything there that I can follow up on. Obviously, I'm around and available on LinkedIn if anybody wants to connect with me, or if you are connected with me and you have a question, certainly shoot me a question and I will do my best to answer it.
Okay. There's a question from Rebecca saying, are we getting the recording of the session? Of course, you will. Then there's a question from Zimena asking, is there a minimum requirements to get CBDA certified? There is no minimum requirement to get CBDA certified. You can take it as long as you understand the concepts behind data analytics. This is
Yeah,
a
I
good
will
question.
say
Yeah,
that's actually a great question. I will say that um, CBDA also basically integrates the idea of agile development. So you probably should have some exposure to the ideas of agile development. It is intended, honestly, as a certification that requires a certain amount of business analysis background. So that if you don't have any business analysis background, then I would certainly suggest that you look at ECBA before you look at CBDA.
true.
That having been said, I'm a big fan of CBDA certification. I think it's probably one of the best outside of CBAP. I think it may be the best certification that the
Okay.
IIBA offers.
Yeah, Tom, one interesting question from Ashraf. Maybe that's the last question for today. When would you use Tableau against Excel? Under what circumstances we should use Tableau?
Wow, that's an interesting question. When would I use Tableau against Excel? I think if I were developing a a production level dashboard, operational dashboard, I would certainly use. I would certainly choose to use Tableau as opposed to Excel. Um, it would depend a little bit on the organization, how visually oriented the organization is. It could depend on how sophisticated your data presentation is going to be. There are certain limitations to using Excel in terms of visualizations. For standard visualizations, it works very fine, but Tableau can do just an incredible, I mean, there are incredible things that can be done with Tableau. If you want to see some examples, go to Tableau Public and search around there for a while, and you'll see people have just done the most incredible visualizations, incredible dashboard kinds of things using Tableau.
That's a great answer. I think if you're looking at dashboarding and advanced visualization, maybe Tableau is a better option compared to Excel. And
Yeah, Tableau also.
one last question from Evita. Evita saying, is Excel and Tableau a good starting point for developing specific skills to pivot into a data analysis role? Of course, that would
Yes,
probably be a good start.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
Okay. So
it's
we are
just that
almost.
if you're going into, go
Sorry,
ahead.
Tom. Please. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, if you want to go into heavyweight data analysis, you're probably going to have to look at some other tools. You're probably going to have to look at Python. You may have to look at R. You may have to look at some programming skills. But for getting started, Excel is a beautiful place to start. Tableau for visualizations is also a beautiful place to start. The thing that I was going to say is that Tableau also has the capability for producing what they call stories, which are sequences of dashboard presentations, so that if you're doing presentation in a business environment, you have something where you can use almost like a PowerPoint presentation. It's
Wow.
that powerful.
Okay. Okay. I think we're dot on the hour, Tom. So let me thank all the participants who came in today. And we are glad that you were here. And let me thank Tom as well for spending his time today. And hopefully, we would see you as engaged partners to Adaptive going forward. And you will hear a lot more about other BA aspects from us as well, including a lot of discussion on product ownership, which is picking up a lot of steam, on agile analysis, and maybe something on strategic analysis as well. Thank you, folks, and have a lovely day, and we will catch up soon.
Thanks, everybody.